My name is Shirley. I'm 72 years old, and I live alone in an old house in Rochester, New York, the same house where I raised my son with my own hands after my husband, Michael, died trying to save a child in a fire, one that is so kind. I never married again. I thought my love was enough. But let me ask you something. Have you ever been betrayed by those you helped create? Because I went, and not by a stranger, but for the woman my son chose to love. The same one I hugged as a daughter. No, the same as one day he raised his hand to me. Oh, maybe you're wondering how a story gets to this point. How is it that a lady who only gave love and a roof ends up being called a weight? I also wondered that for a long time. Today, I know the answer. How? And that's all. How? This story has pain, silence, heart, betrayal, no. But there is also justice, the one that doesn't need screaming, because sometimes it is in silence that we win. But before we dive into the heart of this story, I need you to know one thing. That slap I took in front of everyone, was not just a physical assault. It was the point at which everything turned. It was their engagement. 40 people around the pool. Loud music, loud, fake laughter. What channel bound? Watching that too, until she came towards me. What call I you pulled me tightly and whispered in my ear, "Give me the key to this house." Old woman. I said no, and that's when her hand came, dry, in the middle of my face, a slap that burns to this day, but not on the skin, burns in the soul. From then on, no, the mask fell, and I discovered that there was more behind that scene. Documents, lies, a whole plan to get me out of my own home. And if you want to know how I turned this game around, with silence and dignity, I invite you to stay with me until the end. But first, if this story has touched you in any way, if you feel like this could happen to any mother, support me with your like and your subscription. It's not just for me. It's for all the women who have been forgotten inside their own homes. My home in Rochester has always smelled like brewed coffee and freshly baked cake. It is the kind of place where we left our slippers at the door and our hearts in the living room. The neighborhood kids came to learn piano with me after school, and the older neighbors knew that on Sundays the front gate was leaning against it, because inside there was a table set, a loose laugh, and food that hugged. Loneliness never had a place there, and I was proud of that. I was proud to have made a home with little money, but with great care. After Michael was gone in that fire, accounted on, and I was alone with Ethan in my arms. I didn't have time for long mourning. I had to keep going. I woke up early, cleaned offices, came back in the late afternoon to take care of him, prepare dinner, review school assignments. On hard days, he would look at me with those brown eyes so similar to his father's and say, "You're my rock, new mom." And I really was. I turned down wedding invitations, opportunities to move to another city, to make my life again by him. because I thought that if I took good care of myself, if I gave my all, nothing bad would touch my son. I was wrong, but at that time, I believed. When Ethan grew up, he went to study business at a nearby community college. She worked part-time and, in the last year of the course, she brought Juliet to dinner with us. A well-groomed, intelligent girl. Her little daughter graduated in marketing. One of those who already arrived talking about goals and career plans. I thought it was different, but I smiled. I made my roast chicken with potatoes, set the table with the white crochet tablecloth my mom had made. She praised the food, no bon one, so concern, but with that tone that we don't know if it's sincere or if it's an obligation. I wanted to like her. Really? I was soon showing the photos of Ethan Small, his little room with his childhood memories, the science fair trophies. She just nodded. Oh, please down. Later, he commented that maybe we should renew the style of the house if they were going to live there. I laughed and said that each thing could be done with time and love. And she smiled, but not with her eyes. Juliet started to appear more. He came to dinners, participated in conversations, gave suggestions. At first, I saw it as a good thing. He thought Ethan had found someone to share his life with, and I, with my silly heart, was even thinking about giving them the upper floor when they got married. After all, what mother doesn't dream of seeing her child happy inside her own home? But over time, I noticed small cracks in this beautiful painting. She avoided talking to me when Ethan wasn't there. He moved things around. Once, out of nowhere, he took my ceramic vase out of the room because it broke the color palette. It was just a vase, but it was there that I felt that maybe that girl wanted more than space. I wanted control. Ethan, how blinded by love, my hand, did not notice anything, or pretend not to notice. She said that Juliet just wanted to help, that I should relax and accept that life changes. And I tried. I swear I tried. But there was a day that I don't forget. It was on an autumn afternoon, one of those that the red leaves cover the sidewalk. I was preparing my apple cake, and Juliet arrived before Ethan. He entered without knocking. How? And before any greeting, he said, "Mine." We were thinking, now, Dionasiga, maybe it's time for you to consider living with your sister in Buffalo. That cut me like a blunt knife. I laughed, not understanding, and she continued, "Mom, it's just a suggestion. Ethan needs space, and this house. Now, all soon. You're already getting a little tired to take care of everything, right?" I didn't answer. My Sue, I didn't answer. I just stirred the cake batter again, because I learned, since I was a little girl, that when the word hurts, silence is shelter. No, there are times in life when we realize that the love we gave for free, it has become a burden, that the ceiling you built has become a target. And the saddest? That's when it comes from inside your home. If you've ever felt this pain of being discarded by those you raised with so much love, write here in the comments. I've lived it, or it touched me. because I know I'm not alone in this. And sometimes, just knowing that someone understands, we breathe a little better. But at that time, I still didn't know the size of the hole that was opening up under my feet, because what Juliet wanted, it wasn't just space. She wanted the whole house. And what happened at the next dinner made that very clear. Do you want to know what it was? So follow me. I don't know. Because that's where her mask started to fall off, and I started to lose my place in the house I built with my own hands. After that day when Juliet suggested that I go live with my sister in Buffalo, something inside me broke, but it didn't break completely. I kept smiling, as if pretending not to understand. I kept tidying up the house, putting fresh flowers on the table, cooking for Sunday nights, trying to keep everything standing. But do you know when the air changes? When the environment that was yours starts to look rented. Strange? That's what started to happen. Juliet no longer hid her intentions so much. He took pictures of the house all the time. The facade, the kitchen, wow. The wooden staircase that Michael had so lovingly restored. Once, I caught her photographing my room. I said much as see no word. I asked her naturally what it was, and she replied, laughing, "Wow, I'm just playing decorator. Surely, let's change all this here. Wow, right?" But her laughter had no sound of play. There was a warning sound. I tried to believe it was all in my head, but the fleeting looks, the dry answers, and the way she began to ignore me in conversations. Everything was showing me that there was no more respect there. Ethan didn't seem to notice, or maybe he didn't want to see it. When they were together, they whispered too much. Whenever I entered the room, the subject changed. One day, I heard them at the top of the stairs. She said, "I'm shown very sad. If we take the upstairs and renovate it, we can turn it into a loft." And with the money from the sale of the garage, we were able to make the closet of my dreams. Ethan replied with a muffled laugh, "Calm down. No, the house is still hers." And she blurted out, "For now, no, yes." That phrase stayed in my head like an echo. For the time being, never have two words seemed so heavy. I started to pay attention to the small gestures. Juliet went through my things without asking. She took the crochet from the armchair in the living room and kept it so it doesn't look too old. He hid my silver spoons and exchanged them for stainless steel cutlery. He changed the curtains. Once, I found my iron pots in the basement, and she said it gave you smell allergies. Ethan just smiled and said they were modernizations. But I began to understand. Well, it was not just modernization. It was a substitution. One night, late in the morning, I got up to drink water and heard laughter coming from their room. Muffled laughter by a signal, followed by a whisper. "No, she doesn't even suspect it. She's pathetic." I froze. I stood there at the kitchen door, with the glass in my hand, trying to control the tremor. I returned to the room slowly, little, tired, each step hurting more than the other. Ooh. And there, wow, I'd stayed the couch, alone, neither. I sat on the edge of the bed and thought, at what point did I become a laughingstock in my own home? But I didn't confront it. Not yet. I swallowed that pain like someone swallowing a bitter medicine, hoping it would pass. I still hoped that it was a phase, a disagreement, something that would be resolved in time. But time, instead of healing, began to show more. Juliet started talking about me in the diminutive. Will Shirley Zinha want to put her lace here too? Let me take care of it myself, monster. Otherwise Shirley Zinha will get lost. Ethan never corrected. He only lowered his head. I pretended not to hear, because there are times when silence is the only dignity we can hold. But the worst part was when she started receiving visitors without telling me. Real estate brokers, college friends, a couple who walked through the rooms of the house as if evaluating footage. One of these women asked, "What about this nice lady who lives here with you?" Juliet laughed and said, "Oh, her. It's my fiancé's grandmother. Oh, but is already leaving." On the way out, I smiled at the woman and went to my room. I closed the door calmly and, inside, Lee looked at my husband's photo on the dresser. That house had been our dream, our sacrifice, and now I was treated as a guest, or worse, as a hindrance. That night, I cried silently. Wow. My face sunk into the pillow, but I still didn't know that the worst was yet to come, because behind Juliet's smiles, there was more than contempt. There was a plan, and I only found out about it when I saw a paper that I shouldn't have seen. Can you imagine what it was? Because it was there that everything changed. It was there that the owner of the house woke up. That Saturday, I got up early, as I always did when I wanted to prepare something special. I woke up to the sound of the birds in the window, and that quiet desire to maintain, at least for one more day, the appearance that there was still harmony under that roof. I put on my white apron, the one with the blue embroideries I made when Ethan was a child, and went to the kitchen. It was decided I was going to prepare my famous lasagna. It was the dish that everyone always ordered on birthdays, holidays, and even on the day Ethan returned from college for the first time. I wanted, deep down, that dinner to be a small reminder of everything I experienced there, of the woman I was, from the mother she still was. The table was beautiful. I used the linen tablecloth that my mother left. I removed the set of plates with flowers that I kept for special occasions. I arranged the candles in the center of the table. I made fresh salad, garlic bread. I even served a soft red wine, because I thought they would like it. Juliet arrived last, high heels hitting the floor like a hammer. He came with a bottle of imported water in his hands, and an air of superiority that he no longer tried to hide. Ethan was behind, fiddling with his cell phone. The two sat at the table as guests at an expensive restaurant, not as children in a home. I served lasagna with great care, as always, and there I ate. They ate a lot, 3 pieces each, but no one said a word. No, thank you. No, it's delicious. Mom, Miru. When I went to offer the wine, Juliet looked over her glass and said, in a loud tone, with all the guests listening, "Shirley, where am I? Once say walk out until my this doesn't suit our new lifestyle. We are trying to cut sugar, lactose, alcohol." Everyone laughed. Ethan laughed. I just put the bottle down and said I could save it for another day. The taste of the food was already gone from my mouth. I was silent the rest of the night, serving, cleaning, smiling from the corner. My eyes dried the dishes, but inside they cried. Later, when everyone had left, I went to the kitchen to get the lasagna platter. I heard Juliet's voice on the speakerphone of the cell phone. She was talking to a friend, unaware that I was in the hallway, behind a half-open door. "What are you, Bob?" Her voice was clear. Cold, practical, onion, silly sound, how the Jensen Tarzi style. He said, "Wait, others. I can't stand this house with the smell of old anymore." But the lawyer said that, with his name on the deed, soon it will no longer be a problem. It will only be a matter of time. I felt my body freeze. The plate I was holding slipped out of my hand and fell into the sink, making a dry noise. Juliet hung up right away. When I walked into the kitchen, she feigned surprise. "Oh, Shirley, I didn't know you were still awake." I smiled, as if I believed it. He said he was just packing things, but inside, something broke. What she said, it wasn't just cruelty. It was a warning, a subtle threat. That night, I lay down, unable to sleep. I stared at the ceiling of my room, remembering every corner of that house, every brick that Michael laid with his bare hands, every night of Ethan's fever I spent sitting next to his bed, every photo, every smell, every story. That house was my whole life. And now, Leo, I was treated like an uncomfortable shadow inside her. But I haven't confronted it yet. Not that day. Because before I acted, I needed to know how far they were willing to go. And what I found out days later, it was much worse than I imagined. Do you have any idea what might be hidden in the papers inside a drawer? Because I found something there that changed everything. It was any ordinary Saturday, or at least it seemed like it. I left early to go to the corner market, bought my vegetables, Lord, a tray of chicken, 2 very firm red apples, and a package of coffee that was on sale. Simple things of those who are still trying to keep a home. I returned home with the bags in my arms, and my heart lighter than on other days. But it was enough for me to open the door to understand that something had changed. The smell was different, the arrangement of the furniture as well. My burgundy rug was no longer at the entrance. The old sideboard in the living room was gone, and where our family photos used to be, my wedding. Ethan's diploma was his first Christmas with his toys scattered on the floor. They were now modern, abstract, faceless, soulless paintings. I stood there for a few seconds, with the bag still in my hands, looking, taking a deep breath. I walked to the living room. The TV had been replaced. The crocheted pillows that my mother made were no longer on the couch. The old radio, which my husband used to listen to Yankees games, was gone. It was then that Juliet appeared, with a clipboard in her hands and a short smile on her face. Shirley, you arrived early. We decided to advance some changes. We're updating the environment. You know, this house will be ours now. I was speechless. My ears were still looking for another explanation. But that was it. She said it with all letters. No, this house will be ours now. Ethan was in the kitchen, sitting with a cup of coffee in his hand. No, he didn't look at me. Wow. She just said, in a low tone, "Wow, it's just a reorganization. Mom, we need more space, more lightness, more space." I climbed the stairs as if walking on quicksand. Each step hurt my knees, but even more so in my soul. I opened the door to my room. My clothes were folded, now boxed in the corner, as if I was already leaving. The quilts on my bed had been changed. The curtains, too. Even my Bible had been piled up along with my cookbooks, as if this was all part of an inconvenient past. I sat on the edge of the bed, or rather, in the bed that was once mine. Noisita pressure ad cocktail. And for the first time, I felt like a visitor in my own history. The silence of that room seemed to scream, "You don't belong here anymore." I remember that at that moment, I thought about getting up, screaming, demanding respect. But what came out of me was a sigh, an old sigh, one of those that come from decades of silent effort. It is not weakness, it's tiredness. Here, opening my heart and telling this story with every bit of pain and memory I carry. And if you've been listening to me until now, follow me on this journey. Leave a like on this video and subscribe to the channel. I still have a lot of things in store to tell you, because that box with my folded clothes was not the end. It was the warning. Now, consider what Juliet and Ethan did next. That's what forced me to wake up for good. Have you ever found, by chance, a secret hidden in the back of a drawer? Because I found it. And what was inside? It would change everything. I closed the bedroom door carefully, so as not to make any noise. I took the box with my clothes to the bathroom, the only place in the house where I could still lock the door and feel, for a few minutes, my own. I put the box on the floor and looked at myself in the mirror. His eyes were red, swollen, non-celled, but dry. I didn't cry easily. I had spent my life swallowing my tears because I needed to be firm, because I had a boy to raise, a house to maintain, a life to hold on my arm. None stayed at what a chair and a note or a name shucked in child. But at that moment, Newhow, in front of the mirror, locked in a dukan, with my things folded as if they were old garbage. The tear came. Oh, only one. One? It came down slowly. Wow. Cutting my face like a knife. I sat on the cold bathroom floor, hugged my knees and cried like I hadn't cried in a long time. It wasn't just sadness. It was mourning. I fight for everything I built in there, for everything I thought was firm. I fight for myself, and in the middle of the silence, I remembered Michael's voice when we were still renovating the house. He said, "No, surely you're stronger than these beams here. Storm may come whatever. One, you can handle it. One." And I endured so much, but nothing prepared me to be rejected by my own son. After a few minutes, I got up, washed my face, did my hair as best I could, and left. The house was quiet. Juliet had left, and Ethan was in the living room, watching television as if nothing had happened. I approached Nirhan, sat next to him, and asked in a calm voice, "No, Ade, son, do you really think him a burden in here?" He took a long time to respond. She stared at the screen for a while, and when she answered, it was as if she had already rehearsed. "That's not it, Mom. It's just that Juliet is trying to organize things. We have plans. You understand, right? Sometimes changes are necessary." I took a deep breath. "And do you think I haven't changed for you? That I didn't leave my life aside to guarantee yours? Everything you have today? Ethan, it came from my hands, of my absence of sleep, of my denial of dreams." He curled up on the couch, as if he wanted to get out of there. He didn't have the courage to look at me. And that's when he said, "No," as if wanting to end a conversation. "Maybe it would be good for you to spend some time away. Give it a breather. Go to Buffalo. Stay with Aunt Carol. Not far. Just for a few days." A few days. I got up slowly. The room seemed to spin. Every word of his weighed heavily on my shoulders, as if I were really an old piece of furniture that disturbed the decoration. I went to my room. I closed the door and sat on the bed until the day got dark. I didn't eat. I didn't watch television. What? I just stood there, listening to the house breathe without me. The next morning, I seriously thought about packing my bags, call my cousin Carol in Buffalo, and ask for a room, a couch, whatever. But when I opened the dresser drawer to start arranging things, I saw a yellowed envelope with my name scrawled on the edge. I didn't remember keeping it there. Open. Inside was a copy of the deed to the house, and just below, a strange paper with Ethan's name, Juliet's, and my signature. But it wasn't mine. My fingers froze. That wasn't just disrespect. It was flat. It was a coup. And if you think I was running to confront, no. I sat down, took a deep breath, and thought, now, I know what it's all about. I and going to stay, not to fight, but to understand how far they are willing to go. Because what lay ahead, it would require more than strength. It would require strategy. Have you ever seen a mother become an investigator inside her own home? Well, get ready, because I came, and what I found out later, there is no forgiveness that erases. That morning, the sun came through the window as if it wanted to wake me up gently, but my chest was already heavy even before the first rays touched the wooden floor of the room. I had slept badly. The image of that fake signature kept popping into my head. I got up slowly, my body aching, but it was the soul that weighed the most. I went straight to the living room closet, where I kept the old folders with documents from the house. I knew that inside there were papers that could give me some clarity. Maybe it was crazy of me. Maybe I was seeing monsters where there was only dust. But a woman of my age has already learned to trust omens. And that, it was clear. I opened folder by folder. Ow. Sir, I said, don't say no radio and can't see it come. Old electricity bills. Documents from the late Michael. Well, drawings of Ethan as a child. Everything there was memory. Past life on paper. No. Until I found the copy of the original deed to the house. There it was. Shirley Margaret Thompson. Sole owner now. Since 1981. Oh. No transfer. No. A kid. Nicola. No donation clause. The house was mine entirely. I remembered the day when, years ago, come now, and say okay, Ethan asked to access some documents from the house. He said he needed it for the income tax, something like that. I signed an authorization to remove copies. That's all. Lucy, I'm now captured in a sitter, but I never authorized a change of ownership. How? And at that moment, I was sure that the signature on the other paper was not mine. I continued to rummage through the drawers, and it was then that I found, half crumpled in the back of the office cabinet, a printed paper, an email. The sender was Juliet, and the recipient, a real estate agent. The headline read, "Availability for sale, property in Rochester." My heart raced. I read line by line. There it was. We intend to put the house up for sale by the end of the summer. I need to know average values to close urgently. The owner is elderly, and the transition needs to be fast. Elderly, no. Close urgently. That woman I accepted into my house, who ate my food, who slept under my roof. I was negotiating my way out, like someone selling old furniture. The sale was already being forwarded. The plan was ready. I was no longer a person to them. I was an obstacle. I sat right there on the floor of the office. The email trembled in my hands. I remembered Michael once again. Our conversation on the first day we set foot in this house. Here we will build our safe haven, surely. And I did that. I took care of every corner, every wall, every brick. I turned a house into a home. And now, They were getting me out of it with pen and paper. I took a deep breath and said in a low voice, "So it's real. Wow. It was not my exaggeration. They want to get me out of here. No, no. There are stories that we start thinking we know where they will end. But I promise you, from the bottom of my soul, what happened after that, not even I could imagine. And that's why I want you to stay with me until the end, because the moment will still come when everything will come." I got up from the floor, folded the email carefully. What we sent was in them shown, and placed it next to the original deed in a dark blue folder that I would keep like gold. From that moment on, I was no longer just the mother trying to keep the peace. I was the woman who finally saw who was really inside her house, and who needed to leave. But to act, I needed proof of intelligence, of silence, and also of help. And the help, it would come from where I least expected it. Have you ever confided a heavy secret to someone from the past? Well, that's what I did, and the answer I received, it gave me the strength to start my plan. I climbed the stairs with slow, almost ceremonious steps, as if each step was a farewell that I wasn't ready to do yet. The house was quiet that afternoon, and the smell of old varnish and sun-warmed wood brought back a memory I hadn't visited in a long time. I saw myself in my early 20s, holding Ethan in my newborn lap, with his eyes closed and his mouth reaching for my chest. That hallway has seen so much, and no one seemed to remember. I touched a wall on the left, where, years ago, we marked his growth with a pencil. You could still see, if you looked closely. Whoa, calm. Ethan, 4 years old. Ethan, 6 years old. It was as if the walls still whispered his name, while he, yelled, my dancer's sections. I could barely face myself. I entered his old room, now transformed into a kind of warehouse. But there, in his memories, he still slept with his hands closed like fists, cried for fear of thunder. Threw a tantrum to brush his teeth. I approached the wall and ran my fingers through the blue paint, the same one we painted together when he turned 7. Michael climbed a ladder and spilled half of the can on the carpet. Ethan laughed so hard that day. I went down to the basement and opened the attic door. I climbed carefully, the wood crackling beneath my feet. I hadn't been there in years, but what I found paralyzed me. A cardboard box with my name scrawled. Inside, old notes, handmade drawings with crayons, letters with crooked hearts. Mommy, you are my hero. When I grow up, I'll buy you a castle. Wow. Wait for me awake. I'll be back early. I sat on the dusty floor and read them, one by one. One by one. Every little piece of paper was a proof of love. Why? From a time when I was everything to him. And now, it was just a nuisance. It's strange how we donate our whole life for someone and suddenly find ourselves forgotten, as if love wasn't an investment, but a loan. And a deadline had expired. I stayed there for hours until the sun began to set. And in a heavy silence, I realized I had given more than I could numb. I gave my time, eyes, my body, why, my youth. I sold my old car to pay for his university tuition. I worked on Sundays, washed clothes by hand, ate leftover pans so he would have a full plate. But now, it's a you. Now was a detail out of Juliet's decoration plan. Have you ever felt that? This pain of being erased by those you created with all the love in the world. If so, write me here in the comments with a I know how it is, or a I understand you. Because this pain, when shared, hurts a little less. But as I cried silently, hugging those memories, an idea began to form. No, idea. If the past was the only thing that was still mine, then perhaps it was the past that would help me change the present, because I was going to show that memory is also strength. And before they tried to erase me for good, I was going to rekindle everything I built there. But for that, I needed an ally, and I knew exactly who to call. You. Do you want to know who it was? So prepare your heart. No, because the tables have started to turn. The house was full of lights, laughter, noise, and strange voices. People I had never seen in my life walking through the rooms, taking pictures with champagne glasses, praising the modern decoration that Juliet had ordered, not knowing that there, where golden balloons now hung, they had already experienced Christmases, birthdays, and stormy nights in which I hugged my son in the dark. It was their engagement, and even though it was in my house, I looked like an old piece of furniture forgotten in the corner of the living room. I stood outside in the garden, sitting in an iron chair that Michael had painted years ago. Why, the grass was trampled on. The smell of lavender from my flower bed disappeared under the strong scent of the guests. I watched everything in silence. He no longer fit in any group, in any conversation. Juliet was radiant in a tight beige dress, cup in hand, I say, and that kind of smile that doesn't reach the eyes. I talked to everyone as if I already owned everything. The house, Ethan, no, my story. Oh, I saw when she pointed to the balcony and said to a friend, there we will close and make an integrated dining room. It will be a luxury. The music played loudly. The colored lights reflected on the glass of the living room door. And I was there, quietly, with a glass of water in my hands, waiting for the night to pass. That's when it came. Walking with that stiff heel gait, with two witnesses behind, a friend and a guy who looked like a lawyer or broker, I don't know. She stopped in front of me, who leaned a little, and said in a sweet but icy tone, "How? Surely we need to make some things official." I stared at her without answering. What your beams? She smiled. No, Nasty child. So another second, watch him stay. The keys to the house. Can you deliver now? Since you're really going to spend time away. I felt time stop. The sound of the music. The laughter. Everything seemed to be distant. Her friend adjusted her cell phone camera. Ordinate? As if she wanted to record the scene. The boy on the right just watched. And Juliet continued, it makes it easier for everyone. He does it with elegance. I took a deep breath. I got up slowly. I held on tight to the arm of the chair, not out of weakness, but out of firmness. I looked her in the eye and said, in the calmest voice I could, this house is not for sale. And it's not you who decides what I deliver. She leaned closer and whispered, you're going to regret making things difficult. And before I could say anything else, then came the slap. Dry, fast. It snapped in my face like a slammed door. The sound cut the air and silenced the music. For a second, the party was mute. Everyone looked. Some glasses stopped in the air, and I stood there, my face burning and my heart in pieces. Ethan came running. I thought, now, for a silly second, now, that he was going to defend me, hug me, to say something, anything, but all that came out of his mouth was, Mom, don't complicate it. No, it doesn't complicate things. Those two words hurt me more than the slap. I looked up. Everyone was watching. Some pretended not to see. Others whispered. Juliet still looked at me with her chin up, as if she had won a war. I straightened up. I straightened my shoulders, and with my hand still shaking, I ran my fingers over my face. There was no blood, just shame and pain. I turned my back and walked through the garden, slowly but with my head held high, because I could be hurt. But I wasn't going to bow down. Inside, I was in shards. But at that moment, as the party lights flickered again, and the music resumed with effort, I decided that it wasn't going to end like this, because there are pains that we don't forget, but there are dignities that we don't deliver. And what Juliet didn't know, it's just that I still had one last letter saved. Have you ever seen an injured woman turn the tables with elegance? So stay here, because it is now that my answer begins. That night, after the last guest left, and the empty glasses were scattered around the yard as if they were wreckage from a shipwreck, I went up to my room in silence. His face still burned where the slap had hit, but it was the emptiness in his chest that hurt the most. I lay down without taking off my dress. I stood there, listening to the muffled voices of Juliet and Ethan downstairs, laughing as if nothing had happened. And for the first time, I didn't cry, because something in me had turned. No. I waited for the house to fall silent. Around 2 in the morning, I went down barefoot, in silence, and went to the back porch, the same balcony where, years ago, Michael sat after work, with his boots dirty with soot and his eyes tired from saving so many lives. I sat in the old armchair that still kept the shape of his body. The wood creaked, but it welcomed me. There, embraced by memories, I understood what needed to be done. I wasn't going to scream. I wasn't going to argue. This they expected. They wanted me as the out-of-control old woman who disrupts the party. But what they forgot, it's just that, before being forgotten, I was strength. I was a pillar. Melt. I was a base and a foundation. When it is solid, man does not fall easily. There, as in a sexual category, as that morning, I made my decision. Wow. I was no longer going to wait for love. I was going to fight for justice. I went back to my room and took a pen and paper. I started writing letters, notes, dates. I made a list of everything I remembered. The days of the awkward conversations, the names I heard on the phone, the printed email, the copy of the original deed, every detail. Then I went to a box that I kept in the back of the closet. Inside, among old albums and Michael's love letters, there was a yellowed business card. One. Albert McNally, un sos consil, at calm, et doctor. Michael's former colleague in the fire department. Family friend. Nice. Lawyer. No. Now, retired, but known for never swallowing injustice. I called him the next morning. Nice. His voice answered with that heavy buffalo accent. Shirley, Moyen, how long ago? I didn't tell you everything right away. I scheduled a coffee. Said I needed to talk about a delicate subject. We met at a modest diner on Main Street 2 days later. He wore suspenders, walked slowly, but his eyes, they were as sharp as ever. I told him everything, every detail. I showed the papers, the notes, the email, the deed. He listened without interrupting, just making small nods. When I finished, he was silent for a few seconds. Then he said, with the firmness of someone who has seen a lot. They messed with the wrong woman. Surely, I left that cafe with more than advice. I left with a strategy. I started to organize my steps. I kept copies of the documents in different places. I wrote a handwritten letter to Ethan, which I have not yet delivered. A letter that, one day he may read with different eyes. I bought a small safe and hid it inside my old sewing machine, the same one Juliet thought was too ugly to stay in the living room. If this piece of my life can become a mirror or a hug for someone, will it help me to carry it forward? Like and subscribe here to the channel. It makes more difference than you think, because no one knows what a silent woman can do. In those days, I started to observe everything with different eyes. Every sentence from Juliet, every message from Ethan, every box they tried to discreetly take to the basement. I pretended not to see, but I wrote everything down. I was no longer just an old lady. I was a living memory, and memory, how? When you have courage, it becomes a test. But to take the next step, I needed one last confirmation, and it would come without me having to look for it, because fate sometimes is in charge of delivering the truth. You believe in coincidences that seem like a warning. So, wait and see what happened the following Sunday. Because, what I've heard, he left no doubt. That morning, I woke up earlier than usual. The sky was still a little gray, and the house, as always, too quiet for those who have ever had children's laughter running through the corridors. I put on my best blouse, the navy blue one with pearl buttons that Michael loved, and left quietly. I took the bus line 12, sat at the window and watched the city go by, like someone looking at an old movie. Every street in Rochester brought back a memory for me. But that day, I wasn't just a lady going out to solve papers. I was a woman on a mission. And when a woman who has suffered in silence begins to act, it's because she's past the point of taking it. I went straight to the accounting firm that Albert had indicated, a modest building, with worn carpet and the smell of old coffee. They attended me with kindness. A young man named Henry, young, with a clean face, received me with respect, without asking unnecessary questions. I took everything: the original deed, the printed email, the notes. He read everything calmly. At the end, though, he looked at me and said, Mrs. Shirley, you are right. Legally, the house is yours, and yours alone. They may not sell, rent, or transfer without your authorization. What they tried to do, it's fraud. I thanked him, with that lump in the throat of someone who has waited to hear this for too long. Then I walked to this city registry office. It was an old building, with thick columns and tall windows, the same where, years ago, Michael and I signed the purchase of the house. The lady at the counter looked at the documents, pulled the records into the system, and confirmed what Henry had already said. My name was there, alone. Neonaonan, Sidisish, Altrasan, too, as the owner and mistress of everything that exists in that house, from the foundation to the last tile. I asked for a new, certified copy. I kept it inside the bag as carefully as if it were a newborn. On the way back, I stopped by the office of the young lawyer Albert had recommended. Joshua was his name. Serious, polite, with that look of someone who has seen many cases, but is still moved by injustice. I showed everything. He listened. I took notes and guided me firmly. One day, we are going to file a judicial restriction on the sale. This prevents any movement in the property without your direct signature. It's your right. I signed the papers with steady hands. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I was back in control. And the best, nobody knew. I returned home with a heavy heart. Yes, but it was no longer fear. It was preparation. It was strategy. And that night, sitting on the porch, I embraced silence with another kind of strength. They still smiled when my mom made plans, believing that I was defeated. But the board had already turned, and they didn't even notice. No, sometimes we think that only screams have power, but silence when it comes from someone who has cried too much, is more dangerous than it seems. And that's why I ask you, stay with me until the end of this story, because the most remarkable moment is yet to arrive. And when he arrives, it will hurt those who deserve it most. But before that happens, he had a night that revealed what they really thought of me. A conversation I should never have heard, but I did. And that's when I understood. It wasn't just ambition. It was contempt. That's it. Anadamao. Arbolanis. Lutikakta. Update 2 years. It is much more dangerous. Are you ready to know what was said behind my back? Because I heard everything, word for word. Joshua called me on a Tuesday morning. His voice was calm. No, but there was something tense behind the words. Mrs. Shirley, I managed to get some parallel documents linked to the address of your house. Can you come here today? I went directly, without thinking twice. I already knew that tone. It was the kind of voice that prepares the ground before delivering a truth that hurts. He received me with the same respect as always, but this time with a brown envelope in his hands. He placed it on the table, and opened it carefully and took out a piece of paper stapled to a greenish stamp. This is an attempt at a public power of attorney, partially registered at the Jefferson Street Registry Office. Supposedly, you were the one who signed it. I picked up the paper with my hands. I looked closely. The lyric seemed mine, but it wasn't. It was an imitation, shoddy, clumsy. Well, her full name, now a Joe, and your card, and you accepted to talk tonight. Shirley Margaret Thompson. Correct address, but the content, it was a false authorization. A document that, if finalized on one part, would give Ethan and Juliet the right to sell my house without needing me, without me even knowing. The signature at the end made my stomach churn because I knew exactly where and when they had pasted it there. I remembered the day Juliet asked me to sign a bank document, saying that it was to facilitate something about Ethan's income tax. I trusted. I haven't read everything. I signed in a hurry. Between the smell of baking bread and the noise of the phone ringing. That was it. It was there that they had started the plan. Joshua looked me in the eyes. The registry office has not finalized the registration. Documents were missing, and the notary who stamped this here is being investigated for forgery. But the fact that they tried, it's serious. I was silent. Inside, a mixture of anger, disgust, and an old, deep sadness that is not expressed in tears. It was as if something inside me had cracked once again. But not by me. For Michael's memory. For the history of that house. For all that it meant. They didn't just want a beautiful place to live. They wanted to erase my existence. Take not only the ceiling, but my name. I looked up and said, with the driest calm I've ever had, they can even walk around my house, Joshua, but they won't walk through my story. It's curious how certain moments freeze inside us, like an emotional photograph. The lawyer's small room. View. The smell of freshly printed paper. The yellowish light coming in through the blind. Everything was recorded. Because, there, I understood that what was at stake was not just the property. It was the symbol. It was my identity. You know, there are memories that never go away. They stick to the soul. A phrase, a signature, loose, a crooked look, and we carry that forever. You are the one listening to me. Have you ever been through a moment like this? A memory that marked you so much that it seems to still live inside you. If you've experienced something similar, or knows someone who has, right here in the comments, share with me. Sometimes sharing the memory makes it weigh less. I returned home with the copy of that fake document in my bag. The silence of the house seemed colder than usual. Juliet greeted me with a dry hi, without taking her eyes off her phone. Ethan was in the backyard. Why, painting a chair or pretending to paint. Everything seemed normal, but I knew. They had no idea what I knew. And it was there, standing in the hallway. Adieu, Bob. Well, now just, with the envelope tight to my chest. That I decided. They weren't going to knock me down, neither with paper, nor with a coup. But one thing still made me uneasy. Who was the notary who stamped that? And why did you accept something so dirty? Joshua said he was being investigated. No, but something told me there was more behind it. A connection, a well-known name. And when I found out who it was, I almost didn't believe it. Have you ever heard that expression, the enemy slept at my door? Well, now, I found out that he had already entered. I set the table as I used to, when Ethan was still my boy, and Sunday mornings were made of pancakes with maple syrup, and the smell of freshly brewed coffee. I put on the hand-embroidered white tablecloth, the one Michael gave me on our 5th wedding anniversary, and arranged the cutlery carefully, as if delicacy could disguise what would come next. I called them both in a calm voice. Coffee is served. Juliet appeared first, with that theatrical way, dressed too much for a simple breakfast. Ethan came close behind, avoiding my gaze. They sat down. I made a point of smiling. As someone who still believes in peace, I served warm pancakes, the teapot steaming, put the cups in their proper places. With my every move, Juliet gave me a suspicious look, as if waiting for a trap. We ate almost in silence, just the sound of the fork on the plate and the birds in the garden. It was like a picture painted with tension, and then, without changing the tone of my voice, without shaking my hand, I said, Ethan, Juliet, before we're done, there's a little thing I wanted to share with you. I picked up the brown briefcase that was on the chair next to me. I took out 3 documents and placed them delicately on the table. Like cards in a game, I knew I was going to win. The deed to the house, the injunction to block the sale, and the denunciation of the attempted fraud with the false signature. The world seemed to stop for a second. Ethan turned white as the dishes on the table. Juliet reached for one of the papers. Read a few lines, and let out a nervous giggle. That doesn't mean anything. There must be some mistake. You're confusing things. Shirley, howling now. But her eyes, they couldn't lie. They were wide, now, accelerated breathing. I gently poured the cup over the saucer, took a sip of coffee, and replied, Bernard, there is no mistake. I know exactly what they tried to do. And now, the judge also knows. Ethan hadn't said a word yet. He stared at the papers as if he wanted them to disappear. I saw a trace of shame on his face. Or maybe it was just fear of losing what wasn't his. I continued, still in a serene voice. What in our town? You used my love to try to take what I built with my husband. They laughed at me behind my back. They made me think I was getting old, confused, tired, but I was just silent, waiting for the right moment, and he arrived. Juliet got up from her chair, slamming her hand on the table. How? You can't do that. The house is already ours, too. Ethan has the name. No. And I interrupted her with a calm gesture. He has access. He never had possession. He never had the right. And now, with Sidad, by court decision, why get the tight? He cannot even rent the garage without my authorization. I turned my gaze to Ethan. Do you remember when you said I was your rock? When you were afraid of the dark and asked me to sing for you to sleep? When did you cry because you lost your job and I sold my ring to pay your rent? That's that. I remember everything. I just didn't expect you to forget so quickly. He lowered his eyes. Juliet snorted, turned, and left the balcony, stomping firmly. I got up, picked up the dishes carefully, untouched pancakes. The teapot is still hot. The silence between me and Ethan screamed more than any argument. Before entering, he only said, Mom, get inside. The house is still mine, and you, they are no more. I closed the balcony door behind me. Wow. And for the first time in a long time, I felt something inside me breathe again. But that was not yet the end, because every open wound, it needs to be cleaned completely. And what I discovered in the following days moved me even more, because not everything that was tried against me was visible. Some secrets were hidden. Very close. Have you ever wondered what a child is capable of doing for money? So get ready, because what I found, not an punchy. It still pains me to remember. The next morning, the sun had barely touched the ground in the yard when I put the suitcase on the porch. Each piece of clothing folded with the same care that I used my whole life to take care of him. Ironed shirts, jeans that still smelled of the drawer where they had been stored since he was a teenager. I put everything with care, because even after everything, I couldn't do it differently. On the side of the suitcase, I left the keys, the same ones that Juliet demanded with a slap. Now, they were there, one and one, not as surrender, but as an answer. On top of the small gray suitcase, I left the note I wrote by hand. At dawn, you were born in this house, but those who are born also leave. Surely it was not revenge. It was clarity. I went back inside, prepared my coffee calmly. When I saw, I drank looking out the kitchen window. I saw when he left the room, went downstairs, opened the door and saw the scene. He stood still for a good few seconds, as if time had stopped. He didn't try to hit. He didn't scream. He didn't ask for an explanation. He just lowered his head, took the suitcase, put it in the car. Ethan didn't take even half of what was his. But maybe that was it. It was never about what you take. It's about what is lost. The lawyer, I say, Joshua, had already sent the official notification the day before. Document signed. Then was goodbye. With legal deadline recognized. No further movement could be made inside that house without my permission. And inside the envelope, in addition to the notification, there was a direct message. The occupation was closed, and any attempt to reverse it would be dealt with legally. Juliet, of course, tried to reverse it. He called my lawyer 3 times, sent emails, tried to bargain. He said that it was all just a misunderstanding. But it was too late. She could memorize beautiful words, but the character, Lindio, had already shown itself in full. Now, I was left alone. Now, the house was quieter than ever, but it was a good silence, a silence of mine will. For the first time in months, I walked through the rooms without fear of hearing whispers behind the doors. I turned on the lights without hearing complaints about energy consumption. I made my lasagna and ate it with gusto, without hearing anyone say that this doesn't suit the new lifestyle. You know, there are people who think that loneliness is punishment. But for those who spent so much time living with disrespect, silence becomes a prize. And there, that Sunday afternoon, knowledge child, and Sunday afternoon, sitting on the porch where it all began, I felt peace. Not the peace of those who have won a battle, but the peace of those who have rediscovered themselves. But fate had not yet ended with me. No, because some stories, as much as we think it's over, now, they always keep one last chapter. And that's when a letter arrived, with a name I hadn't seen in years, a name that carried old questions, buried sorrows, and, perhaps, one last piece of the puzzle that I thought was complete. Want to know who it was? And what was inside that envelope? So, stay with me. Because not everything that hurts comes from the present. Some wounds, come back from afar. The letter arrived on a gray morning, one of those when the wind seems to whisper things that we don't want to hear. The envelope was light blue, handwritten in a familiar but distant handwriting. When I read the sender's name, I felt a chill run down my back. Juliet, she had written as if she were a victim. She said that I was being unfairly expelled, that I was unstable, that I needed to be helped before I did anything to myself. She accused me of emotional abandonment and of being a lady with obvious signs of mental confusion. The letter came with veiled threats. suggesting that she would make everything public, that she would publish it on the networks, that she would show who I really was. I folded the paper slowly, put it back in the envelope, and left it on the table. I didn't cry. I didn't tremble, because when we understand who the person is, nothing surprises anymore. In the following days, she tried everything. He sent messages to neighbors, insinuating that I needed care. She posted photos of the house saying she was being forcibly removed from a home she helped build. A lie. But none of her words had more force than the documents signed by a judge. Joshua was firm. He responded to each accusation with elegance and precision. The posts disappeared from the air after 2 days. Maybe she realized that messing with a real woman wasn't like manipulating social media. And then came Ethan. The doorbell rang on a Sunday morning. Whoa. I opened the door calmly. It was him. Red eyes, unshaven beard, trembling hands. Mom, can I come in? I nodded. No, you wouldn't. He sat in the same chair where Michael used to read the newspaper. Whoa. I stood tall. Lien Khan. Lisa Stenka. He began to speak. He said he didn't know things had come so far. That Juliet was pressuring him all the time. That he felt trapped. Pride. Phew. He spoke of the fear of losing everything. He apologized to me? No. But with each word, nah, I heard not the pain, but the despair of those who lost control. He wasn't there for me. I was for him, for what he lost, for the house, for the security, for the image he tried to maintain. I listened to everything, like someone who hears the rain hitting the roof, far and away, without getting wet. When he finished, I lowered my eyes, took a deep breath, and just said, Ethan, I gave you everything, even what I didn't have, and you sold it for crumbs of false affection. I don't hate you, but I don't recognize you anymore either. He tried to hold my hand. I backed off slowly. I just wanted to go back, he whispered. And that's when I understood. He didn't want to come back to me. I wanted to go back to who I was before. The mother who said yes, who always forgave, who opened the door and served coffee. But that mother, he left on the day of the slap. I remained silent. He stood up, slowly. As if carrying not a suitcase, but his own conscience. He walked out the door without looking back, and there, in the empty hallway, I was alone, but firm, because there are things that we live and keep. But maybe by telling, we help another heart to breathe. Enjoy this video and subscribe, and let's make this story reach those who need it. But there was still something Ethan didn't know. One last decision I made. Something that would seal what was left of the past and make room for my future. And when he found out, perhaps it was too late. Want to know what it was? So get ready, because silence. I still had one last word. The day dawned with a blue, so clear that it seemed like a provocation. I already knew what awaited me. Juliet had secretly scheduled a visit of interested parties with a real estate broker. She probably imagined that I would be out, or that, after all, I would hide in some corner, resigned as she expected of an old woman. Little did she know that I had woken up early, made a strong coffee, put on my best navy blue sweater, the same one I wore to Ethan's christening, and opened all the windows in the house. If anyone was going to enter there, it would be through the front door and with the truth exposed. At 10:30 sharp, the silver car pulled up in front of the garden. It was an elegant, modern sedan that reflected the sun like a blade. From it came a young man, a light gray suit, tablet in his hands, looking confident. He knocked on the door, and I opened it myself. "Good morning, ma'am. I'm here to evaluate the property. Are you Shirley Thompson?" I smiled gently. "Well, Gotaka, I am. Come in, please." He entered, looking around, analyzing every corner as if the history of that house fit on a price per square meter list. I took him into the living room and offered him tea. He accepted. Well, sir, a little disconcerted. Mom, I prepared it calmly, unthinkable, and it soon helped, serving it in porcelain cups that I kept since Michael was alive. As we sat down, he began. "The owner told me that the sale is urgent. Can I take pictures?" That's when I took out of the folder the printed injunction. With signature, with signature, stamp, and everything else. I placed it on the table, next to his cup. This house is not for sale. It never was, and any attempt to trade will be considered legal fraud. It's all here? No. Duly registered. One. He read at it. The hand that held the cup began to tremble slightly. "Sorry, I didn't know. I know I don't. You only followed orders from those who lie too easily. But now, Zero, he is aware, and I hope it takes this information to those who need to listen." He closed the briefcase, apologized once again, and left as he entered, in silence. But now with a different posture. There was no room for doubt. No. I sat down on the couch again. His heart was beating firmly, but not racing. Wow. It was as if everything had gone back to its place, and it was there, with the morning light coming in through the window and reflecting on the memories of the polished wood, that the landline phone rang. I answered without haste. "Mrs. Shirley, this is Margaret, Juliet's mother." For a moment, my hand was suspended in the air. She spoke in a low voice, as if carrying weight. Apologized. She said that she knew everything, that her daughter had crossed all limits, and that she felt ashamed. "I always thought you were like a second mother to her, but it seems that my daughter, now, was lost." I was silent. Not out of anger, but out of compassion. I knew how hard it was to admit that we created someone who hurts others. She asked, nicely, to talk, to intercede, to maybe get something back together with us. But my answer came out firm and serene, like water that runs clean after the storm. What my house once sheltered, I keep in my memory. But what hurt me, I leave it outside. Nice. Turned off. Not with bitterness, but with firmness. And sometimes the biggest wins don't make a sound. They happen like this, between a sip of tea and a well-signed document. That morning taught me that justice doesn't need to scream. It just needs to arrive. And it arrived. But there was still one last card left on the table. Something I hadn't told anyone. A decision I made alone. During the sleepless nights, looking at the ceiling and reviewing every piece of my life. Because more than protecting my home, I needed to decide what to do with what I had left of time, faith and name. And this choice, it was going to change everything. Want to know what I did? So, listen carefully. Because sometimes it's in the end that we find the beginning. Time has a curious way of returning everything to its place. Sometimes, not the way we expect, not even at the time we would like, but he gives it back. Months had passed since the day the broker knocked on my door, and the dust of confusion was settling like the mist that disappears when the sun insists. The house breathed again in its old rhythm. The curtains were washed, the furniture replaced, and the smell of apple cake returned to occupy the kitchen on Sunday afternoons. It didn't take long for the news to spread subtly. In Rochester, stories don't need a megaphone. Just glance at the grocery store, whispers in the pews, and that's it. The whole city already knows without anyone having actually said it. Juliet lost her job. She learned from a neighbor that the reason was a complaint of document fraud in another property purchase process. The same pattern, the same kind of counterfeit paper. This time, the client was a widower, a war veteran. She tried to say it was a mistake, but the company, too big to handle scandal, unceremoniously hung up. Ethan? He moved to a small apartment in Irondequoy. A bedroom and living room. Bedroom and living room. Overlooking the parking lot. Window. Alone. He tried to continue working at the same technology company, but something about him no longer shone. It wasn't just the guilt, it was the absence, the lack of soul. He also learned that the marriage did not last, if we can call it a marriage. They parted ways without much fanfare, no past paper, no farewell party. Each one went to their own side. And the silence that remained was the only testimony. At church, where I have attended for more than 40 years, no one has ever asked me directly, but I saw it in the eyes. Some already knew, others just felt it. I continued to arrive early, in my navy blue coat, the same one on the day of the engagement. He sat on the same bench in the third row, and he sang the hymns with the same firm voice as always. The older ladies greeted me with an extra touch on the hand. The young people, down the hill, with restrained respect. And the shepherds just smile with that air of someone who understands that there are victories that do not need applause. Because, you see, their fall had no audience. There was no scandal. no headline, but each consequence fell with the exact weight of the choice they made. And me? Follow. Calmer. Inno cabdin. Habsigo calm. Lighter. Antium. And, in a way, more whole than before. Heiss. But there was something that still pulsated inside. A silent decision I made about the future of the house, my heritage, my history. Because justice is not just about preventing evil, it is also planting the good where they try to destroy. And when I revealed what I had done, even the lawyer was silent, because no one expected it. Neither did Ethan, neither did Juliet, neither do you. Perhaps, but the time has come to tell it, because what I did with that house, it was the greatest lesson of all. Now you have card. Wanted to you more down. Want to know what it was? So pay attention now, because now the end comes, and with it, the beginning of what really matters. Life has returned to the sound I like. The light creaking of the wood under my steps. The clinking of the spoon on the saucer. The whistling of the wind through the cracks of the balcony. And silence, but not that silence of fear, of those who walk on eggshells inside their own house. It was the other type, the silence that welcomes, that heals, that says, now it's just you. Surely, and that's okay. After everything, I climbed into the attic for the last time, with another look. I opened the boxes that I kept for decades, with the smell of childhood, of yellowed photographs, of letters written with a fountain pen. I dusted off the albums that showed Ethan with his hair all messed up at First Communion. I even found the cards Michael wrote when he returned from duty at the fire department. One of them said, "You are my home, even when everything seems to be on fire." I kept it with affection, but this time, no, I didn't hide again. Whoa. I left everything within reach, as if I said to myself, "Oh, I have nothing more to hide, near now, or to hide. Whoever comes here will see exactly who I was, and who I still am." I started taking care of the garden by myself. Oh, planting gives a peace that no one understands until they do it. The hands on the ground, the sun hitting the back of the neck, and that feeling that life goes on, even when they uproot our roots. Mom, she continues, it was on one of those pruning days that the cat appeared, striped, brown, green eyes. There was no leash, no fear, no balcony or child lots. He arrived, sprawled the living room carpet and stayed. I named him Thomas. I never liked cats very much, but this one, no. It seems that he knew where it hurt. He sleeps next to me, in the armchair on the balcony, as if he had always belonged here. Gradually, I began to open my home again, but only for those who know how to enter with respect. The neighbors come on Saturdays. I make lemon cake, serve tea, and we talk about light things. No past. No. How did you hold up? I just smile and say, each one here has her story. Mine doesn't hurt anymore. What? And it's true. It doesn't hurt. Because now, looking back, Ah, I understand that my mistake was never to love too much. It was never being a mother to the last strand of me. The mistake was to trust that the love I gave would be understood as shelter when, oh, for them, it seemed more like a key. Today, I see that there are people who confuse affection with possession, who think that because you give everything, they have the right to take everything from you. But love is not a contract. Love is a daily choice, and they stopped choosing. The house, this house, is just a construction. But what lived here, nobody can take that away from me, neither with paper nor with a slap. You know, no. There's something I learned, and I want to tell you now. Listen well. Scars are not flaws. It is proof. It is the mark of those who went to the end and came back. I have several nuan and out of each one, but I still need to tell you one last thing. A choice I made, Leonard, a paper that I signed, a future that I prepared, not for them, but for someone who really understands what home is. And when I tell you what I wrote in that will, maybe you will understand that justice sometimes is just planting good in a land where they tried to sow contempt. Do you want to know who I left everything to? So take a deep breath, because the end of this story will move your heart. No, that slap was never just on my skin. It was in my legacy, in the memories I built brick by brick, hoping that the love I planted would blossom into gratitude. But that was not what happened. No, and the year that Wadimo count, Alnatisilks, because I learned that reacting with shouting is easy. It is really difficult to follow with lucidity. Today, well, the house is as I like it. Silent, wow, full of history, the smell of cake, of flowers planted with affection. Ethan? He still lives in Irondequoit, and occasionally sends a short message, but I don't expect any more long answers. Juliet disappeared from the map. Weirdo. I heard that he moved to another city, trying to rebuild his life. Let him redo it. Let him learn. But around here, peace remained. Ah. And before you ask me, yes, I made my will. I wrote each line with the calm of someone who doesn't need to take revenge. The house will be for a local foundation that welcomes elderly women who have suffered abandonment, because if one day they want to try to erase my history, let them at least know that it continues in others that still have a lot to live. The truth, my dear, is that forgiveness is not forgetting. It is choosing to move on without carrying the other on your back. And justice, the most elegant, it is the one that does not need an audience. I didn't win with scandal. I won with silence and with choice. Today I sleep in peace. The house is mine. The time is mine. And the heart, all those scarred, beats with dignity. I was a mother. I was forgotten. But now I am free. I am free. If you have come this far with me, know that you did not walk alone. Sometimes telling our story is like spreading a blanket over the lap of someone who is feeling cold inside. Thank you, from the bottom of my heart, for staying until the end. Your like for me, now, town is like a hug that warms up. Your registration is an invitation to come back here for another coffee. Dear not work is you out, or to tell them sound, or to say another story. Tell me in the comments which city you're listening to me from. I want to know where each heart that has passed through here comes from. And it activates the bell when I see. That way you don't lose when the coffee is brewed again. Don't go away yet. Listen to the next true story that will appear on the screen. Always remember, each wrinkle tells a story, and each story carries a strength. Watch the next video here on the channel with another incredible story.